Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of you for being here. As most of you know, whether it's the Commerce Committee or here at Judiciary Committee, we have been focused on what we're going to do with the NIL issue and how it's going to affect student athletes. Likewise, we have been very concerned about men in women's sports and what that does to the student experience. And Trinity, congratulations to you on your outstanding record. I am absolutely delighted that we have the opportunity to hear your perspective today. Governor Baker, it's no surprise to you. I want to come to you first. And one of the things, pardon me, that we're looking at is the patchwork of state laws and how that affects so many different processes with the recruiting process, dealing with NIL, different approaches, different types of collectives. So as you look at this patchwork, knowing that it's going to impact schools differently, whether it is Ole Miss or St. Joe or whomever, talk for a moment about how you're going to clean this up and what is your timeline for delivering it. Your predecessor never could give us a date, time, and place that something was going to happen. So give me a timeline, give me a way forward. I think every university, there's 1,000 schools in this country that you all cover, and they all want to know, what is that process?
So thank you very much for that question, Senator, and I do appreciate the time you've given me on these issues. With respect to student-athlete transparency and access to information and consumer protections, which is sort of how I think about it, those are in the process of being written up, and I expect they'll be ratified before the end of the calendar year. Okay, and those are going to...
And the implementation would be at what point?
It would be effective the beginning of the next scholastic year, so let's call it August of 2024.
Okay.
With respect to institutional involvement, which is another issue we've talked about quite a bit here, I would expect those to be done by March, and I would expect that right around March we'd also be dealing with the issues around recruitment. Also effective August of 24.
Okay, so there
Now,
will
the question then becomes, Senator, those will be the ratified and voted on bylaws by the organization, by the NCAA and its membership, but that doesn't necessarily mean that in the current legal and regulatory environment, everybody will comply with them. And I fully expect at some point we'll have...
And then with men and women's sports, when do you expect some specific guidance? Because you just responded to Senator Hawley that you didn't think the situation with Leah Thomas and Riley Gaines, who, by the way, is a Tennessean, that the position would be the same. So when will there be specificity on that?
Well, first of all, the rules around, as I said before, the rules around transgender athletes generally are more restrictive today than they were in 22. And I can state pretty clearly that no one's going to get forced into any sort of situation that's going to make them uncomfortable. We make that very clear in the guidance that we give to anybody who hosts one of our championships, period.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jones, if I could come to you, please. The collectives are something that we have looked at, and of course, as we know and has been discussed today, 98% of your college athletes do not play pro sports. And then looking at the NIL issue, the financial benefit to the student, the need for financial literacy in this, the need to prepare that 2% that do go on to the pros, because we hear 78% of those athletes end up in bankruptcy. Talk a little bit about what the collective is doing. You said in your testimony that you all don't help with recruitment. You jump in after the students are there. So how do you help prepare them for this?
Well, I think a lot of what we've heard today about collectives are outdated perceptions that probably were formed over 12 months ago when collectives were first being formed. They weren't as well staffed, they didn't have as much guidance, and they were just trying to figure things out. I think collectives, like everything, has evolved over the last 12 months, Senator, to a much more functional, well-staffed organization run by business professionals that provide resources and tools. Because at the end of the day, I think originally collectives were about just writing a check to the athlete. There's no doubt about that. But I think what's happened now, collectives, and at least for mine specifically at the University of Mississippi, it's as much about developmental as it is compensation. And I believe that's philosophically the way we should be going to protect the well-being of our student athletes, to make them better prepared and more functional members of society when they leave their campus. So most collectives in the 25 in the TCA, we stand united for, we already are very transparent. We have our contracts on file with universities. We are all about getting the bad actors out with an agent registry and a standardized contract. We have no problem with those things. So we support a lot of that, what we've heard today. I just think the perception of collectives is outdated. We have evolved just like the market has evolved, and we are giving our athletes resources and tools so they're better prepared in financial literacy, being a tax-paying citizen, networking in business, protecting the value of their name on social media, and all those tools, and how to deliver an obligation we are compensated, which is the tools they're going to need, Senator, whether they play, to your point, professional sports or not, and the majority will not. And the tools that we are providing on the collectives of today are helping them prepare for that.
Mr. Chairman, my time has expired. I think it might be helpful to us, knowing there are other collectives in the room, if we could get a written statement from them of what their process of participation is with their students, as we look at having some certainty and consistency in this process across the country.
Thank you. I'm turning it back